Hello and welcome to the Historians podcast. I'm Liz.
And I'm Des.
Hi, Des.
Hi, Liz.
I'm so excited about this week.
I am too, because I feel like you got into some sort of method acting recently where I
What?
could kind of tell where this week's episode is at least going. So it's not necessarily method acting, but like you started listening to a lot of Irish music suddenly.
Hey, St. Patrick's Day is coming up.
Not that soon.
I mean, I did kind of give it away with your topic this week.
This is true. The topic as well. But even before then, I was like, we're getting into a role. I can feel it.
Je ne sais quoi.
I can feel the political defiance.
I will say that this week is actually on a topic that I wasn't going to do. But then I was like, well, the timing when this comes out, I believe it will come out at a good time in the year. And also, it'll explain itself in a moment.
Cool.
But it also will help clarify some things with my next topic, actually.
Oh, okay.
I started out
a little package deal.
Yeah, I started out with my next topic, and then I was like, I need to establish some information.
Quickly realized you needed some world building.
I needed some foundation to build upon.
Cool.
Ugh, foundation keeps on coming up.
Oh no.
So I have some stories after the reveal, but let's first go into, Desi, what was your prompt this week?
My prompt was very simple. It was, what is Irish home rule? So when I first heard that, I was like, oh, I know a little bit, about that. I'm not going to lie and say that despite living in Ireland, I did not know everything. I had a primer and that was pretty much it. But to give you guys a primer on it, Irish home rule essentially was this really big issue between the 1870s and the 1920s. And what it essentially was that there was a series of legislative attempts in the late 19th to 20th centuries that was aimed at granting Ireland some self-governance while still remaining part of the UK. Because at this time, the UK had control of Ireland as a whole. It was a response to the Act of Union of 1800, which centralized the British government in Ireland. They started to, try to have some legislation to get a little bit more self-legislation, to have a little bit more independence. And the first Home Rule Bill was introduced in 1886 by Prime Minister William Ewart Gladstone. And this faced a lot of opposition, especially from the Protestant Unionists in Ulster. And Ulster is the northernmost province of Ireland. Ireland is split into 4 provinces. So they didn't really love this idea. They thought that it would jeopardize their political and religious rights. So there was some tension there, and the continued attempts at trying to get this passed only made tensions between the nationalists and the unionists worse. Eventually, once they got closer to World War I, that national emergency kind of diverted some attention away from that struggle. And ultimately, in September of 1914, the bill passed. So this, was to be implemented after the war was over, but it kind of diverted attentions away from it, from what I found.
So the bill wasn't so much as passed as put on the back burner, I would say. Like, it was kind of like, we promised to get to this, but we have more pressing issues.
See, this is why Google is not a reliable source, people.
And
Which is why we do the prompt.
Exactly. And also, I need to double check to see if it was passed or not. But I definitely know that essentially it was like told to the parliament or to the governing body, we can't focus on this right now. We have bigger fish to fry.
Which is probably why it was implemented post World War I, because the national emergency was just too much.
Yeah. And they put like, we're not renewing this for season 2.
Right.
Until we address this other show.
Well, and naturally, because they had that sort of attitude with it, there was a lot of unresolved issues surrounding home rule, which eventually led to the partition of Ireland and the Irish War of Independence, which I'm sure is what your topic is going to be linked to today. So that's just a very brief primer on everything. The Irish War of Independence was brutal.
Yeah.
There was a lot of very, what shall we say, kind of boots to the ground activism that
Grassroots.
Yeah, grassroots. That, you know, on some hands it's like it's very commendable, but also a lot of people died.
Yes. And that will be a common theme that we see throughout this episode. So before I get into the meat of this episode, I want to kind of tell about how I came about this topic for the first time. So I went to Ireland for the first time while I was in undergrad. It was the summer before I graduated, and went over, was in this wonderful program. It was like 7 weeks long. And one weekend, we took a long weekend and we went to Dublin, stayed in a hostel, and then just hit up so many historical sites.
That sounds amazing.
It was amazing.
That's my dream vacation.
It was so fun. My feet were blistered to hell, but it was so much fun. I definitely recommend just going to a place and hitting up every single historical site. So while I was in Dublin, I was taken to the General Post Office. And in it, there's this really cool statue, and it's called Dian Cuchulainn. And he was an Irish folk hero. He was known as like the Hound of Ireland because he killed a man whose name was Culains. It could be many ways to pronounce, or none of those ways to pronounce it. His fierce hound, and offered himself in his place. So then he also gained the title of the Hound of Culainn. At 17, he defended Ulster by himself against armies commanded by Maeve of Connacht. And what this statue is depicting is his death. And he died. He was mortally wounded because we were just talking about like societal norms and like you should not do this or else you're going to be punished, hospitality stuff.
Yeah.
He was actually weakened because he refused to be inhospitable to an old woman who offered him dog meat, and he was like, no, I never eat dog meat, but he could not deny it.
Right.
And so
like, oh, thank you.
So
is this Dalmatian?
No, I'm called the Hound.
Yeah, this is wrong on so many levels. No, thank you.
I'm called the Hound of Ireland. Come on. So he was weakened by that. And then he tied himself to a standing stone. So he was standing upright and on his feet to face his enemies after being mortally wounded. And it was only known that he had actually died because he still gave off this like radiant life force when a raven landed on his shoulder, signaling his death. So I'm guessing that also signifies like the Morgan as well, who was an Irish goddess. So this is standing in the General Post Office. You can see it in the front window. I believe it's still in the front window, but it is a really cool statue. And it is there specifically because it ties into my topic for this week, the Easter Rising of 1916.
Woo!
So I remember learning about this. And also another aspect of visiting that building is that when we exited, we were getting this kind of rundown of the quick history of Dublin. And so we went from the Viking Age to, the 1920s.
Yeah.
And outside, my program director stopped and he pointed up at the columns, and there are still bullet holes in those columns. And it is
so harrowing.
It is astounding. And like, it's just like looking at it, and I don't know, being an American, like I feel like they quickly patch over those things, and everything, instead of being like, no, we are leaving this here as a memory of history.
Yeah, I like that they don't like to forget things.
Yes.
With us, it is very much so like,
let's get over it.
We're going to rebuild. We're just going to tear it down and start over again.
Yeah, we need to just get over it. Okay, guys. So I want to do a quick little rundown of the British influence in Ireland. So it goes all the way back, baby.
Baby, we got bad blood.
Yeah. So in 1170, Strongbow arrived on the island, and that marks the start and the beginning of British influence. Then jump ahead a little bit. In 1573, private colonization ventures in Ulster is increased. This is a major year, 1641, Great Catholic Gaelic Rebellion for return of lands. So a lot of Irish had their lands taken away from them for British citizens or those protected under the crown. And Ireland was thrown into chaos. Then we jump into 1649, and that is the execution of Charles I, Cromwell's arrival in Ireland, leading to the Cromwellian conquest and implementation of plantations in Ulster. Like, there were a lot of plantations in Ulster. I don't think that it was specifically contained within Ulster.
Mhm.
In 1658, Cromwell dies. In 1695, 14% of Irish lands were held by Catholics, and that was the majority of Irish people were Catholic.
Ooh.
So only 14% of like Irish people
Right.
owned Irish lands. Also, the rights to education, to own arms, horses, to own horses, and Catholic clergy were all banished.
What
for
the
Irish.
heck?
Yeah.
You can't even have a horse.
You can't even have a horse. That's why you have a mule or a good donkey.
That's bullshit.
So in 1699, acts restricting Irish woolen exports. So essentially, they started passing a bunch of acts restricting everything that made like Irish people able to survive.
Yeah. What the fuck else they supposed to fucking export?
Nothing.
Like,
The British looked at them and
there's
went,
so many
"You will-"
goddamn sheep. What are they
The British
supposed
looked
to do?
at them and said, "You will get nothing." So in 1704, Catholics' presence were restricted in landholding and holding public office. In 1728, acts removing franchise from Catholics. So if you're an Irish Catholic, you have no rights in your own homeland. 1782, Irish Parliament successful in gaining legislature independence from the British. So they were able to get a little bit of recognition as their own, but also it was the wealthy.
Right. Yeah.
So 1792, Relief Act allows Catholics to practice law. So we're starting to gain a
A
couple
little bit. Yeah.
of rights back. In 1822, Irish Constabulary Act was passed, and that established county police forces and salaried magistrate. 1845, the potato blight was found on harvests, and the Great Famine begins. The population fell 20 to 25% due to starvation and emigration.
Oof.
Emigration,
Yeah.
Igration, not IMM.
Yeah. So the people were leaving.
Yes, people were leaving in droves because staying is death.
Yeah.
So then in 1846, the repeal of corn laws, there was a total failure of potato crops that harvest, and the first deaths from starvations were recorded. Now, we were talking about famine a couple,
Right.
like last season, and a lot of what you were saying with the British had done this 100 years before with the Irish.
Yeah. They've been new.
So they knew, oh, let's only take exports from there and don't import any food or anything, even though
Yeah.
that we could to supplement their
They would go
diets.
to a certain place and they would just suck the life force out of it until it wasn't useful for them.
Yep. And so from 1848 to 1849, those were the worst years of the Great Famine. Rebellion by the Young Ireland movement happened, and Battle of the Widow McCormick's Cabbage Garden at Ballingarry happened. And I just wanted to include that because that's one of the best battle names ever.
Truly.
Where did you serve? The Cabbage Garden. Oh,
Yeah.
lost many a good man.
Yeah.
So in 1858, Irish Republican Brotherhood was established by James Stephens, and the Fenian Brotherhood was founded in the USA. 1867, attempted Fenian Rising. 1870, the first Land Act recognized tenants' rights and the foundation of home governing associations. So then we're starting to get towards that movement towards the home rule. So Ireland had been under the boot of
Yeah.
England since 1100.
Yeah.
And they're like, you keep stripping our rights away
Getting worse and worse and
every
worse.
century, and you keep implementing religion and then saying that religion is wrong, and then
Yeah.
taking
Y'all
our
can't
rights again.
stay with one decision.
Yes. And you take forever to communicate your decisions. So
Yeah.
then we're 2 generations through and it had
Yeah.
already been repealed.
Yeah.
So in 1879, there was another threat of famine in Ireland, and the Irish National Land League was founded. And then there were widespread evictions. Then in 1879 to 1882, there was the Land War. Then in 81, Second Land Act. 93, the Second Home Rule Bill was introduced, and the Gaelic League was founded. Now we're jumping. And in that time, home rule was being fought for.
Right.
And it just essentially kept being thrown in their faces that we're not going to concede anything. You want this, but we don't believe that you can govern yourself. So that started the movements, rebellious movements, to start gaining traction and gaining followers. So in 1914, there was an illegal import of arms by Ulster and Irish volunteers. 1815, there was a reorganization of the Irish Republican Brotherhood and the formation of a military council within.
So it's getting more and more, getting a little worry.
Yep, the heat is starting. They
Cranking
put the
up.
frog in the 1800s, and in
Yeah.
the 1900s, it's starting to boil.
Yeah.
And they're not putting down that heat.
No.
And then essentially the slap in the face was, we're putting home rule on the back burner because we need to fight in the British Army.
Yeah. For the country that doesn't give a shit about you.
Yes. And then the idea, a lot of Republicans, so they were called Republicans because they wanted to be governed by the people of Ireland, not by British rule. So the Republicans were starting to be like, no, they might try and conscript us into the British Army. And how,
which is the worst.
Yes, which it's like, we are Irishmen.
Yeah.
And we do not want to fight for the British
No.
Army. Now, there were a lot of Irishmen who did volunteer because they were like, no, this was a world war, so we're going to, fight for...
It was up to the person.
Yeah, it's up to the person. But then, the British, it seemed like they knew that that was such a hot topic that they were like, we're not going to touch that until we become very, very desperate. So... in 1916, there was Easter Sunday. There was going to be another shipment of guns, but that delayed and was lost, essentially. And the Irish rebels had to scramble their plans before the rising. They initially were going to do it on Easter Sunday, a holy day.
I was going to say, it seems very poignant the day that they chose.
Mm-hmm. And also a lot of them are Catholic. And so it's like, no, it's an important day. It is Day of Rising.
I was going to say, if you think about, the religious meaning of it too, that's, huge.
Yeah, it is rising from death.
Yeah.
So, participants of the Easter Rising. The Irish Republicans, they wore green and gold armbands to indicate allegiance. That's a little picture of it.
Cool.
It's quite faded, but that's green and gold. So the three main fighters, there were a lot of acronyms of different organizations that fought under the umbrella of essentially Irish Republicans. The three main are Irish Volunteers, Irish Republican Brotherhood, the IRB, or the Irish Citizen Army, ICA. And then the British forces, there were the British Army, and then the Royal Irish Constabulary. Constable! Easter Sunday, April 23rd, 1916. There was a shipment of German arms that had been lost, and the military council hurriedly met in Liberty Hall in Dublin to decide whether or not to go ahead with the rising. They decided that they would go ahead with it, but they postponed it until noon the next day.
Hoping they would show up still with the arms?
They had to get communications out. They had to send messengers essentially throughout Ireland. They all knew that this was going to happen. Oh shit, it didn't happen. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
So then on Monday, April 24th, participants assembled at Liberty Hall in Dublin. They quickly printed out their declaration of the Republic of Ireland. They didn't have enough typesets, so they had to print it in 2 sets.
Dang.
Because they had to use those types for, what are those called? Types, yeah.
Print blocks?
Print blocks, yes. So they had to reuse those to make the second, paragraph.
Oh, gosh.
So, at noon, the assaults begin. The General Post Office was taken, Dublin City Hall, the 4 courts, the Mendicity Institution, South Union Workhouses, Jacob's Biscuit Factory, St. Stephen's Green, and Mount Street Bridge.
I love that all of these are City Hall, the post office, that one dude's biscuit factory.
Hell yeah.
Listen, you can't have hungry soldiers.
Exactly. You know what? I volunteer to go to the biscuit factory, guys. You know what? This is a real hardship taken on by me. I'm willing to do it, though. I volunteer as tribute.
Mm-hmm.
The thing with like St. Stephen's Green, they were going to take over a different building like across the road from it, but they couldn't. And so they set up in St. Stephen's Green, and then the British Army came and took over that strategic building that they could not take over. And then that was a whole thing, massacre as well. So approximately, now there's different numbers thrown around everywhere, but the median one is like, it could range from like 1,500 to 1,200 people. Those people were Irish volunteers spread out throughout Dublin, taking over buildings, cutting communication lines, and trying to stop and delay British reinforcements. So they tried to take over like the railway station and everything. So the first blood that was spilt was Constable Charles McGee. He was 23, and he was actually like an Irish nationalist as well.
Oh.
But he was trying to close the gates while the Republicans were trying to take over Dublin Castle. So the GPO was taken over, and it became essentially the headquarters and the center of the rising. St. Stephen's Green, I kind of touched upon it. It established as a field hospital, and they hoisted the Red Cross flag to signify that it was a hospital. And they set up kitchens and first aid stations. And it was actually quite funny because twice a day, both sides would cease fire long enough for the park superintendent named James Kearney to feed the park ducks.
Oh my gosh. I just can't imagine these ducks like hearing all the gunfire and stuff being like, wonder what that's all about.
See, and I had a very similar thought, and I was like, did the ducks just stick around? And then I was like, knowing ducks, they probably, when it was firing and everything, they probably skedaddled and flew away, but they know their meal times.
Yeah,
they were like, well, I'm gonna come back.
I just like too that they're like, well, he's got to feed the ducks.
He's got to feed the ducks, guys.
We're not monsters.
Ceasefire. Come on. He has to feed the ducks. And those are the little things that make me chuckle about humanity.
Humans are just so funny.
Because it's like, okay, you can both decide, you know what, we're going to let this guy, this innocent older man, take care of the ducks. But we're still going to shoot each other afterwards.
Yeah. For
somebody else's big game.
For sure, yeah.
We're not that different. So, Patrick Pearse, or Padraig Pearse, or his name, it depended on who was referring to him. He also signed his name differently depending on like who and how he was writing. Now, if he was writing in Irish, he would spell it in the traditional like Irish way. But then if signing in English, then he'll say Patrick. He was one of the leaders and one of the 7 signers of the proclamation of the Republic. And he stood outside and like exclaimed it. He read it out loud outside of the General Post Office at 12:45. So within 45 minutes of the initial assault, they had taken over the GPO enough to be like, okay, we're going to say our proclamation. We don't have any like firing upon us, so we can make this proclamation.
Well, it's also crazy to think that, within 45 minutes, they had this place, to themselves enough that they could do that.
Yeah.
And also, it's a miracle that nobody leaked anything within that day where they were like, let's reschedule.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would love to get a little bit deeper into like those small speculations, smaller, but like I'm sure there were leaks. It was just that information
not enough
couldn't move as fast as it can now.
Yeah.
And also it takes a lot of time to muster enough forces because granted this was during World War I and there were only like I believe 25 or 2,400
so limited
troops in Dublin.
Yeah.
So it was hard to muster. So the formal assertion of the Irish Republic as it established it as a sovereign independent state and a declaration of rights for the Irish people on their own lands. There were 7 signatories: Thomas J. Clark, Sean McDiarmada, Patrick H. Pearse, James Conley, Thomas McDonough, Eamon Sent, and Joseph Plunkett were the 7 main signatories. In it, it says, Irish men and Irish women, in the name of God and all the dead generations from which she receives her old tradition of nationhood, Ireland, through us, summons her children to her flag and strikes for her freedom. We place the cause of the Irish Republic under the protection of the Most High God, whose blessing we invoke upon our arms, and we pray that no one who serves that cause will dishonor it by cowardice, inhumanity, or rapine. In this supreme hour, the Irish nation must, by its valor and discipline, and by the readiness of its children to sacrifice themselves for the common good, prove itself worthy of the august define to which it is called. So I think Patrick Pearse had a big hand in writing this.
Right.
He obviously did. This is very much how he wrote. He shifted the way that my research was going. As soon as I read a couple of his writings, I went, oh no, we're going to veer off into Patrick Pearse.
Yep. Yes, shocker.
So, Patrick Pearse, little fun fact about him. There's not very many photos. I believe there's only like one photo of him straight on, and you will only find photos of him
in profile.
And that is because he had a wonky eye.
Oh.
Or he had an eye that squinted a lot. So he was like, nope, we're just gonna, I want people to focus on my words and not
Fair enough.
My looks or whatever. So he was a teacher, a barrister, a poet, and a writer. He was born in Dublin. His father was James Pearse, and he was actually an Englishman who was a self-educated sculptor and stonemason. And his mother was Irish, who was also a native Irish speaker as well, and she grew up and was born in Dublin. His maternal grandparents influenced his pride in Ireland and nationalism, as well as his great-aunt Margaret helped instill an endearing love for the Irish language, folklore, and Irish culture. So he loved learning about Cuchulainn and everything. He loved those folk heroes. So when I learned about Patrick Pearse, or dived further deeper into Patrick Pearse, I was like, this little boy probably loved Cuchulainn.
Yeah.
And probably was like, he embodies Ireland. So then finding out that Cuchulainn's statue is in the GPO is like so many puzzle pieces together. So many puzzle pieces. And even if it wasn't like intentional, which I believe it is, it's just cool to see. So a common theme throughout a lot of like Patrick Pearse's writing and also his speeches and his advocacy was blood or self-sacrifice for Ireland, for Ireland's freedom, for the Irish's independence.
He was all in.
Yes. It was the foundation of a lot of his beliefs and his going forth throughout his life. Even as a child, a recurring theme in his fantasies would include him self-sacrificing for his country, like the Irish folk heroes that he obviously loved. So when I just imagine him as a little boy, like playing make-believe, and then he's like, and then we go into battle, and
in my dying breath I say,
I say, this is for Ireland.
Yeah.
So he was also a devoted Catholic, and blood sacrifice is rampant throughout Catholic belief. And also like rebirth and reborn and being washed away of your sins and being made anew through blood sacrifice.
Yeah.
Jesus. It's Jesus.
It's Jesus.
Open your present. It's Jesus. So, I just had a thought I forgot to include in the beginning. I have a sweater that says the Easter Rising 1916. It was a 100 years commemorative shirt because I went to Ireland the year after the 100 year. So I got it for 50% off, and I wore that to St. Patrick's Day in my college town. Went to a local bar with my friends, and one of my friends disappeared, and I was about 8 spiders in. And that is a whiskey shot put into a pint of cider.
So you're not just eating spiders?
No,
okay.
No, I'm destroying my liver.
Okay.
I was 21. So I was 8 spiders in and can't find my friend. And I text her and she's like, hey, I left, I went to do this. And so I was like furiously texting her back and I was like, girl, I can call an Uber. I can get to where are you? And everything. And then I was teetering. You know how you go in and out before blackout?
No, I've never been that far. I have self-restraint.
Well, I don't have respect. So la-di-da.
Listen, I don't in any other aspect of my life. It's only for alcohol and I don't care
Look,
about.
Patrick Pierce,
I'm the
like
opposite of-
self-sacrifice. I like self-harm.
Yeah, it's the opposite.
Well, so I was going in and out because I have a problem. No, I was like going in and out. I knew I was like furiously not furious, but texting her, and I looked down and it's my camera. It was in Snapchat, and I had taken pictures of myself with the most furrowed brow.
Oh,
and
no.
then I realized it, and I said in my blackout brain, or like teetering on that, I went, I know sober me's gonna find it funny to take a picture right now. And I took a picture of me surprised as well that I was in my camera. And I still have those pictures. I hope I can find them.
Yeah, I've seen them a couple times. It's really funny.
So, and that was the same night that I got so disappointed in American education because people flaunt their Irish American heritage and they're just so proud of it.
They won't shut the fuck up about it.
They won't shut the fuck up about it. In this tiny little Wisconsin bar, college town bar, I went up on St. Patrick's Day and I said, hey, DJ, play Zombie. And then I played Zombie and everyone went silent and people were like, who's playing this? Zombie by the Cranberries is literally about the 1916 Irish.
God, you uncultured fucks.
And I was
like
anyway.
If nothing else, it's an Irish artist. At the very baseline, everybody should know that.
Yes. Yeah. And so I was like, first of all,
people
who's
are
angry that the Cranberries are being played?
Americans are so fickle sometimes with that sort of thing where it's,
Yeah. So anyway, sidetrack Sally, getting on track. So Patrick Pierce wrote in 1913 and 1915, bloodshed is a cleansing and sacrificing thing. And then he also in 1915 wrote, the old heart of the earth needed to be warmed by the red wine of the battlefield. So the full quote is, blood is a cleansing and sanctifying thing, and the nation that regards it as a final horror has lost its manhood. There are many things more horrible than bloodshed, and slavery is one of them. So, the British response to the uprising, or the rising, it actually caught the British off guard. They thought that if they lost the shipment of guns, that it would delay them.
Right, they got cocky.
Yeah. So there were only 2,400 British troops spread throughout Dublin, so it was very hard to muster them. The rebels were not able to be as strategic as they needed to be or wanted to be in the buildings and depots that they were able to take over. They wanted to take over the communication depot and cut those communication lines, but they were not able to. And so the communication lines were restored relatively quickly once they were taken back over.
Right. You want to prevent them from knowing as long as possible, because the longer that they don't know, the longer the party can go on.
Yes.
You want to hold out as long as possible.
The more land that you can take, before there's going to be a defensive.
Yeah.
And then reinforcements were mustered after those communication lines were restored. They were called from other parts of Ireland and across the sea from England as well. Martial law was declared across Ireland. And then once those reinforcements were called in, drastic measures were started to be taken. Artillery and tactics that unfolded. There were violent street fighting, and that slowly drove the rebels away because it was the British Army fighting against these essentially militarized civilians.
Yeah.
And also remember, this is Dublin.
Yeah.
It is a residential area.
Yeah, this is a big city, and it's full of civilians.
Yeah, and like people are just trying to live and be in their houses, cowering in their houses.
Yeah.
And then the British forces brought in field guns and like artillery guns. So 4-barrel artillery guns.
Like massive machine fed
into a residential area and just lighten up buildings.
Because they don't care.
It's not like the people inside these buildings were just trying to go about their day-to-day lives. They were cowering in fear.
Yeah.
depending on which street you were on.
Yeah.
Sounds like something nowadays. So also I came across one British captain who was like, he was a loose cannon, like fully, because so this guy's name is Bowen Colthurst, his last name, and he shot a teenager and also took journalists in for arrest after he raided the wrong house.
There's always got to be one asshole. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like,
yeah, and
they take it as like an excuse. They're like, oh, well, I guess since I'm shooting.
Yeah, and then it gets worse. He ordered his prisoner's death by firing squad the next day, and then when he set up the firing squad of him, essentially, he shot them in the back while they were walking to the wall.
That is the most yellow belly fucking cowardice
Coward.
fucking shit. The things throughout history, multiple cultures, multiple time periods, the one thing you do not do is shoot someone or attack someone in the back. And it's not just because it's the wrong thing to do because they don't have a chance. It reflects poorly on you.
Yeah.
That you were not man or woman enough to face them.
You could not muster enough courage to face them face on.
Yeah.
In order to take their life.
You had to have the one up.
Yep.
And wait till they turned around. It's absolutely no honor.
It's no honor, and also it's just so, at least give somebody a respectful death.
Yeah.
You know, that's
humans, they can't fight you at that point.
Humans, like, across cultures, death is a sacred thing.
Yeah.
Respect it, you know? And so it's like, you're just,
it's the cowardice.
That's your blatant disregard for these people as humans. So, the human cost. Approximately 485 people died during the rising. Civilians, more than half of the death toll were civilians.
Wow.
The ages ranged from the oldest was 82 years old and the youngest was 22 months old.
What? 22 months?
Civilians.
My gosh.
The fatalities, 16% were rebel forces, 29% were crown forces and the police, and 55 were civilians.
That is awful.
Yep.
That's like crime against humanity.
Oh, and British forces, as well as rebel forces, but also the rebel forces, they were civilians, and so they weren't trained, but there were, like, British forces that, you know, shot nurses. Clearly stated, you know, Red Cross type nurse.
They didn't care.
Yeah. And then also when they brought the field guns into town, they came to the startling realization that field guns are named field guns for a fucking reason.
Because you need a fucking field.
Yeah, so when you have them on a pebble or a cobbled street,
they ricochet.
They slide around. They need that soil to boom, 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 boom.
The recoil is startling.
Yeah, and so they need that soil to be able to get that position to stay and secure in the ground, in the soft ground that then condenses. And but if it doesn't have that, it's just going.
Well, yeah, so no wonder why so many people died, because they couldn't aim for shit, because there's no way to control it with the cobblestone.
Mm-hmm. And then again, as I said, it was a residential area. It was a city, inner city.
Yeah. And also they didn't care because they had already taken away all their rights, their land, whatever. To them, whoever they shoot had it coming in their mind.
Yeah. And also, like, and that's what makes it even more deplorable. They used heavy artillery as well.
Yeah.
So heavy artillery bombarded the GPO and the city. And so the leaders of the Irish Republicans surrendered. They were like,
it's not worth the
I know that we talked about bloodshed and everything, but this is too much bloodshed.
Yeah.
And so that forced the leaders to surrender. And they did not think that the British would use heavy artillery inside the city with civilians in close proximity.
I wouldn't have bet on that either. I mean, it makes sense in the end because, you know, they really disregarded their lives that much. But
also Dublin had a lot of, like, not a lot, but, you know, they had the loyalists in there too. But it
doesn't look good for the British to do this.
No, especially for a country, a nation that was under their rule at that time.
Yeah.
You're using that against your own people.
Yeah.
Even though you don't see them as your own people. In the world stage and world history, they're under your rule. They're your people. So the leaders were taken to Kilmainham Gaol and they were court-martialed. and 15 men were imprisoned and tried for being involved and leading the rebellious uprising. So I included a picture of the inside of the jail. And it's a very interesting layout. And it was for essentially guards to be able to see every single prisoner from certain levels. And there was no privacy or anything. And then the executions happened from May 3rd to the 12th of 1916. And I included the path that they took. So the little cross is where the men would stand. And then they were all killed by firing squad.
Hopefully not with their backs turned.
Yeah, hopefully not when they were walking to the wall. So they were all sentenced to death by firing squad. James Connolly was strapped to a chair because he was wounded. And Plunkett married his sweetheart hours before his execution.
Aww.
And Pierce was apparently whistling on his way to his execution. An Irish folk song.
I was gonna say I do appreciate the kind of tongue in cheek about that.
Yeah. So this was the GPO after, and you can see it bombed out.
And for the people who are just listening, not viewing us on YouTube, it is an absolutely wrecked building. All the windows blown out, gunpowder marks everywhere, rubble.
Yeah, it's a shell of a building.
Yeah.
So Pierce's farewell. His last letter to his mother.
Aww.
The Pierce family lost 2 sons. Both Patrick and his younger brother, Willie, were executed due to their involvement in the Easter Rising. Willie acted as Patrick's assistant / secretary, his go-between. And so he was like, I was not a leader in this.
Right, and he still suffered for it.
Yeah. And so it was the price of freedom, the price of progress, and for an independent Ireland. And I have his letter to his mother.
Oh, it's going to be so sad.
And it's made me cry multiple times.
Gosh.
And so I cannot guarantee that I won't tear up.
Okay.
But I also read it during a very emotional time.
Get your tissues out, everyone.
My dearest mother, I have been hoping up to now that it would be possible to see you again, but it does not seem possible. Goodbye, dear mother. Through you, I say goodbye to Wow Wow, his sister, Mary Bridget, Willie, Miss B, Michael, Cousin Margene, and everyone at St. Enda's. I hope and believe Willie and St. Enda boys will all be safe. Then he includes some information and instructions about his finances and what to do with his poem.
Last wishes.
What to do with his poems after his death. You asked me to write a little poem which would seem to be said by you about me. I've written it, and a copy is in Arbor Hill Barracks with other papers. Just received Holy Communion. I am happy, except for the great grief of parting from you. This is the death I should have asked if God had given me the choice of all deaths, to die a soldier's death for Ireland and for freedom. We have done right. People will say hard things of us now, but later on will praise us. Do not grieve for all of this, but think of it as a sacrifice which God asked of me and of you. Goodbye again, dear mother. May God bless you for your great love for me and for your great faith. And may he remember all you have so bravely suffered. I hope soon to see Papa, and in a little while we shall all be together again. I have not words to tell you of my love for you and how my heart yearns to you all. I will call to you in my heart at the last moment. Your son, Pat.
Aw. Well, and in the end, he did get to die the way that he envisioned for himself. And that is a power and a privilege that not many get in the end.
I think that he was fully okay with his death. I mean, it was said that he whistled towards his death and everything. But I think that with that letter, he realized
this is it.
Also, he's leaving behind his mother. He led his brother away as well, down
the sacrifices that had to be made.
And so it's like, oh, mother, like I'm sorry. And
right.
Everything.
Well, because it's the one person who would have probably said, "Don't do anything rash."
Mm-hmm.
But there are some things that cannot be controlled.
And I read that to my mother and my aunt, who has a son, and my aunt was like, you just want your child to be safe, but also when they're fighting for something they believe full-heartedly in, you want them to be safe, but also they're adults and everything, but you still see them as that little baby.
Right.
You still see them as your child and everything. And so yeah, I don't know, I came about it.
It's very heartfelt, and in the end he was right that this will pass and one day they will be
Yeah.
revered.
Yep, exactly. And so we end up at our so what. So the Easter Rising is one of the most accepted and obvious turning points in Ireland's centuries-long fight for independence from British rule. So I have up here Ireland and England relationship analogy. When I went to that first program, I had one of the professors that we had then in our graduate program, and he grew up in Northern Ireland. He's a Catholic man, and he told us stories of during the Troubles, getting on the bus, and then also like getting beaten up on the bus for taking the bus into a Protestant part of the town as a Catholic. And so I remember him telling us an analogy. Throughout history, Ireland has been essentially a battered spouse, where it's like they ask and ask for change. They ask to be treated better. And Britain is just like, you get what you get.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue to hurt you.
And you better
can't
be grateful.
leave.
Yeah.
And so, that stuck with me. He also brought up, Americans asking, why aren't you all united and everything? Because America, had the revolution.
Not that simple.
Exactly. And he's like, that's essentially telling a victim, why haven't you left yet?
Yeah.
And everything is like, because we couldn't. We were so linked to it, and they were threatening our lives.
Yeah.
They were willing to use artillery on us.
Yeah. They showed that they were willing to go to any means necessary to subdue them.
Mm-hmm. So the Easter Rising, it led into the 1919 War of Irish Independence, which led to the Irish Civil War, and obviously into the Troubles. And that's an aspect of the whole situation that kept like yelling out in the back of my head, that because we are in a state of change right now in our present world, I love to see all of the commiseration, the gathering of people fighting for good, fighting for a movement. But also I want to warn that whenever there's a revolution or whenever there's a rebellion or rebellious ideas, there will be infighting within that revolutionary cause. And then there's battles that fight from there to see whose ideology wins.
Yeah.
So after major pushes or victories, then sometimes the victor starts to tear themselves apart, which also we've seen recently as well. And that's not based on either side. It happens as it happens.
Yeah.
Another thing that kept recurring in my head is the old like Greek proverb that a society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they will never sit in.
Yeah, it reminds me, my science teacher in middle school once showed us like a presentation, and it said, we borrow the earth from our children.
Yes.
Kind of thing, where it's you have to live as if it is not just for your sake, it is for the people who will be here after you's sake.
Exactly. And that's why I don't get why people don't want to make the world better. It's like, I'm a person who might not have children, who might not have children to inherit the earth.
Yeah.
But I want other people's children to inherit a good earth. Why aren't other people okay with fighting for that? And it's just something that boggles me. But also, who knows? But, it kind of made me think of Patrick Pearse. He was willing to fight and fight, sacrifice himself, convince people, essentially, we have to do blood sacrifice.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this to any present people.
No. But he did this all for the benefit of the next guy.
Exactly. He is like, I know I might not be able to see an independent Ireland, but I want us to be able to achieve it sometime.
Yeah.
And this is a necessary step.
Yeah. If this is able to even tip the dominoes, down our direction, then it was all worth it.
Yep. So this all helps establish a foundation in Irish history and into the fight to establish and maintain the Republic of Ireland in the 20th century. Mm-hmm. So my next topic will play upon this, and I hope that this was cohesive enough. And
it's great because, I had a very general idea of what the Easter Rising was, but it's good to see the detail because there's a lot of aspects about it that spill over into like Irish music,
Yep.
the current legends and things that are held within the tradition that are told. And it's an amazing story of their struggle, but also how they've prevailed.
Yeah. And also, earlier I said it, but I believe this episode will be coming out around Easter. So
Oh, yeah, then perfect timing.
So I think that it will be good timing. So yeah, I hope that everyone enjoyed. If you want to learn more about it, I'm going to include further ratings in the bibliography, and I hope that you are all wanting to jump right into episode 6 after but also I don't know what you're gonna do for your next episode. But I'm excited,
guys. I'm just saying that by the end of my next episode, I'm gonna have you all speak in my language.
Hell yeah, brother. Let's go. Alrighty. Thank you so much to everyone who is still listening and has kept on this crazy story that is the Hystorians podcast.
We truly appreciate you.
We appreciate every single one of you, okay? What's the crack? How y'all doing?
How do you do? Is there anywhere I can get me a good pint? I would kill for a decent cider in this goddamn country.
We're doing a Sunday roast. Would you like a plate? So, thank you so much for tuning in, and tune in next time with the Hystorians.